All right, everybody, welcome back to Real Estate and Murder.
I love it.
This is part 2 of the Anna Walshe case.
Yes.
All right, Amy. So we spent the first part talking a lot about the background of who the Walshes are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anna, Brian, kind of how they met, how they got married. They have 3 beautiful boys. Anna, I did it again.
It's okay. It's okay. Sarah's doing her best.
I'm so sorry. And I just made this heartfelt apology.
It's okay.
Anna was
I'm
building.
sure she got it all the time, though.
She probably did. Thanks for making that
yeah.
feel better.
I mean, it's not intentional. So
It's definitely not intentional. Anna was building a really amazing, blossoming real estate portfolio for herself and her career. She was in a fantastic career position, right?
Yeah.
So now we're going to talk about kind of her disappearance, we'll say, and what we know to be like the ending of her story, right?
Yeah. The timeline as outlined. And like we said, like this is an currently active case. So,
So we know what we know now,
Yeah.
but it might change.
Yeah. We know what's been presented.
Right. And you and I talked about doing a follow-up
Yeah.
podcast episode when Brian has actually been tried, we're all the way through it. But that might take time,
Yeah. Who knows?
And we wanted to tell her story now. I mean, beautiful, intelligent woman, deeply involved in real estate, and went missing in January of 2023. So,
yeah.
Amy, I talked almost the whole first
You
part.
did amazing, though.
Talked a lot about Brian. So why don't you take it away?
Okay.
Tell us about the timeline we have now, which, yes, like you said, comes from Brian. Also some, the police reports, some information's tied in there.
Yeah.
And we also know, because we both listened to and read, the charges that the prosecutor read off, right? In her thick Boston accent.
So if you listen to episode 1, if not, go back and listen to it. I gave an abbreviated timeline according to Brian's statement that he gave the police, what he's always kind of said
Stuck
publicly.
Yeah.
We'll say publicly. But this timeline is taken from the prosecutor and court hearings.
Right.
And what we know that's been disclosed publicly.
Sure.
So again, in the United States, you're innocent until proven guilty. And we're just this is what we know from the information.
Yeah. This one's a little rough to remember that that's the case, right? That you're innocent till proven guilty. But
it's okay.
We're going to tell the story.
Okay, we're going to start on December 22nd, 2022. Prosecutors say Mr. Walshe suspected Anna of having an affair. And this is something that his attorneys have denied that he knew up until after she went missing. But on December 22nd is where we're going to start.
Okay.
On December 26th, Brian's mom hires a PI.
Oh, here we go with the Reggie.
Yes. Well, her name's not Reggie, but
I know. Go back and listen to Todd Kolop, the case we did previous to this one. What I'm referring to is some clearly codependent behavior between mom and son, where the son turns out is a complete sociopath.
Yeah.
All right, keep going.
Okay. On December 27th, the Walshes, Brian and Anna, have an oldest son, and their oldest son is 6 years old. And so whenever I mention the son's iPad or phone or whatever, this is the son we're talking about. He was 6 years old at the time. He had an iPad and he also had a cell phone. So the oldest son's iPad searches best states to get divorced in.
Well, I'm sure he was very curious at 6 years old.
6 years old, how to divorce in.
I mean,
but
he's
anyway,
just planning in advance.
So on December 28th, Anna had dinner with a friend in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And the friend tells police that Anna was preparing to leave Brian.
Now, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Can I stop you? Is this friend the person she was allegedly having an affair with?
No, it was a girlfriend that she worked with, as in a girl coworker friend.
All right, gotcha.
Okay. Anna felt that he was going to serve prison time for his art forgery charges. And she was preparing her house in Washington, D.C. to accommodate 3 boys. Because as you remember at the time, Anna's living there by herself and commuting back because Brian can't leave. He's on house arrest.
So he's with the boys at home.
Yeah. And so he's allowed to like take them to school and stuff like that, but and run some grocery errands because she's gone, I think.
Sure.
So the feds have been very lenient with him,
No
acknowledging that he's like this single dad during the weekday.
Right.
And just a side note, because we didn't mention this before, but Anna and Brian had sold their house in Massachusetts when she had gotten this job at Tishman Speyer. They bought this property in Washington, D.C., and they were renting the house in Cohasset that he was living in with the boys because she had to prove to her company that she was
going to make the move.
Yeah, that she was going to live there. But they were kind of trying to wait for this whole fraud case to kind of settle out. But anyway.
Yeah, it was kind of in the way.
Yeah, a big sticking point. So that was on December 28th. On December 30th, Anna flies home to Massachusetts from D.C. So this is New Year's Eve on December 31st. In the afternoon, Anna went to an exercise class and had her nails done. At 8 p.m., family friend Jem Mutlu? Sure.
We're really killing it in this episode with names.
Sorry, guys. Who also was Anna's former employer, arrived for dinner. Brian made dinner, and Jem's interview and stuff like that, he had mentioned it was a very elaborate dinner. And the three of them visited and drank champagne, and he just said they just had a great night. At 10 p.m., Anna and Brian's son came downstairs from bed and socialized for about 20 minutes. At 1:30 a.m., Jem left, and this is the last time someone saw Anna alive other than her husband and a son, which
perhaps
we'll talk about.
Yeah.
So this is on New Year's Day. So that was 1:30 in the morning on New Year's. At 4:55 a.m., again, the oldest son's iPad searches. How long before a body starts to smell? At 4:58 a.m., how to stop a body from decomposing. At 5:20 a.m., how to embalm a body.
What?
At 5:47 a.m., 10 ways to dispose of a dead body.
Okay, I got to stop you. First of all, 10 ways to dispose of a body. I would like to know, one, who wrote the article.
Yeah.
Two, why it was searched that way. It's like 5 things you need to know about dating your man. Like 10 ways to dispose of a body. Are you kidding me? What is this, like a BuzzFeed article? Oh my goodness. What is happening?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So interesting searches going on. Around 6 a.m., Brian would later claim to police that Anna was last seen alive by her oldest son getting into a vehicle to head to the airport. And as you remember, his story is that after the friend left at 1:30 a.m., she told him she had a work emergency and had to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was first looking at these internet searches that the prosecutor has laid out, time-stamped.
Yep,
we talked about time-stamping in Lindsay Buziak's case.
Mm-hmm.
I told my husband, I was like, oh my goodness, if you ever went missing, I have Googled some crazy stuff in research for podcasts.
Yep.
Like,
we've literally searched articles so similar to those.
I mean, mine isn't how to embalm a body, but
so gross. But yeah, I mean, we're definitely suspicious, although we have a podcast to prove.
So, I mean, maybe Brian was going to start one, I guess.
Yeah. Please don't go missing, Jonathan. Please don't.
Okay. At 6:25 a.m., iPad's son searches
the
son's iPad. So sorry.
It's okay. We'll try again.
Yeah. How long does it take to inherit after someone goes missing?
Guy, this is Amy.
And at 6:34 a.m., can you throw away body parts?
You sure can. Would you like to know how I know?
Not legally.
Because he did.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but he didn't tack that onto the search. Is it legal to? No, it is not.
Yeah.
Can you? I don't know. Find out.
Between 9:30 a.m. and 2 p.m., internet searches and websites were visited, including how long does it take for someone to be declared dead and also websites for luxury watches. So he was kind of like all
Sprinkled that in.
over the place.
This 6-year-old, man.
Yeah.
This 6-year-old is sharp.
Yeah. At 2 p.m., a babysitter arrives. Now, Brian had previously scheduled for her to come as him and Anna were going to attend a New Year's Day brunch. However, when the babysitter arrived, Brian told her that Anna had to fly out for a work emergency and he was going to visit his mother in Swampscott. He told the babysitter and the family friend that he had lost his phone. However, police later discovered that the phone was plugged in at their home.
This guy has no idea how technology works.
Or how to
I don't
cover
either.
up a crime.
Yeah,
I don't know.
but I know if I leave my phone on and somewhere, it can be found.
Yeah. Or, you know.
Pinged or whatever.
Yeah. Searching. Anyway. So, the oldest son's phone is now traveling around to different places. And we're going to go through where the son's phone is going to go.
But the son is at home with the babysitter.
The son is at home with the babysitter.
It's obvious what's going on.
So the oldest child's phone traveled to Shaw's supermarket and Walgreens in Cohasset. Brian is seen on store surveillance without his oldest son. Between 5 and 5:30 p.m., the son's phone travels to Venon Liquors in Swampscott. And Swampscott is about 38 miles northwest of Cohasset. And surveillance shows Brian discarding trash in the trash bin at the store.
At a liquor store, randomly.
Yeah, just whatever. Outside in their big old trash bins. Then the phone travels across the street to an apartment complex that Brian's mother lives in, and where it shows it goes near a dumpster. The phone then travels to Lowe's in Danvers, and Danvers is 9 miles northwest from Swampscott. Surveillance footage shows Brian walking into Lowe's by himself, and he purchases several items.
Oh my God.
Do you want to hear what he purchases now or later, Sarah?
No, go ahead and tell me now.
Okay.
I mean, I have my list too, but I found there were different lists. And
Sure.
You know, but go ahead and tell me.
Okay,
Good Lord.
so at Lowe's in Danvers on January 1st, Brian purchases 5 Lowe's 5-gallon buckets, 1 Lennox high-tension hacksaw,
Sure.
48 terry cloth towels,
Not weird at all.
1 framing hammer, 1 Tyvek full coverage suit, shoe guards, mock snips, 200 disposable rags, trash bags, Murphy oil soap, and other cleaning products.
So a murder kit.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you could call it a murder kit, but
can.
a cleaning
up a murder kit. So I just want to say a Tyvek suit. I did make sure I knew what I was picturing when I heard about this.
Sure.
But it is one of those suits, like head to toe covered. They're typically white.
Yeah.
Right. And you see them a lot in like crime scene cleanups, like people that are dealing with hazardous materials wear these suits. They're made out of specific materials like polypropylene.
Okay.
And they usually have like elastic hoods like to go around your face so it pulls tight. And it has elastic wristbands and ankle bands. So the purpose of this suit is to make sure you can deal with a hazardous substance and it won't get on you and
leak in,
contaminate you.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's a Tyvek suit.
Okay. This guy. All right. After Lowe's, he travels to CVS in Danvers. And guess what he buys at CVS?
I don't know, a coffin? Like
13 different types of hydrogen peroxide.
Okay, by types, quick question.
Yeah, I don't know. That's
Is that like brand? 13 different brands? Because I don't know what types of hydrogen peroxide there are.
Well, I don't know either. And also, too, like I've never gone into a store where it's usually just like, here's a brand and here's a generic brand.
You got 13 kinds.
Maybe it's just 13 just hydrogen peroxide bottles. But it was specific that it said type.
Probably 13 each.
So,
okay. Right. Either way, too many.
Yeah. Either way, I mean, here we are.
Now, when I was growing up, my mom always used hydrogen peroxide as like a disinfectant, right?
Sure.
So like, and still to this day, I'll like disinfect my earrings, like pins, hair stuff that I'm using and stuff in hydrogen peroxide. So do you think that was the purpose of the hydrogen? Like what else do you do with it?
I mean, I know it gets out blood from like clothes and stuff.
Hmm.
So, and it cleans like wounds, like it can, I mean, you're
Yeah, it's like a
disinfectant.
disinfectant.
But yeah, it can be used to kind of.
So the next search was, how many bottles of hydrogen peroxide does
No.
it take to clean up a dead body?
Could you imagine?
Yes, I can, Amy. I can, because you're going to tell me more.
All right. The phone then travels to Stop and Shop in Swampscott, where Brian is seen on security cameras, again by himself, purchasing, are you ready for this? More items. Okay. At Stop and Shop, he purchases 3 64-ounce jugs of ammonia.
Oh my gosh.
That's
a lot of ammonia. Oh my goodness.
Now, keep in mind, Brian actually, because of his ankle monitor, he doesn't actually have permission to be any of these places.
This day he does not. He can and has in the past, like his arrangement, again, like we said, with probably his probation officer.
Taking the kids to school.
Yes, he can do day-to-day things, but this was not approved.
Yeah, I mean, he's far away from his house.
Well, and he keeps bouncing back and forth. So you mentioned the mileage. There was about 9 miles difference. But now he's going back to Swampscott, which I would like to know who is in charge of naming that city.
I don't know. I thought the same thing.
He's bouncing around to stores and dumpsters.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey.
All right.
So the phone travels back to Brian's mom's apartment in Swampscott. And Mrs. Walsh has stated that her son told her Anna had traveled back to D.C. for work. Now at 7:15 p.m., Brian's mother contacts her private investigator and leaves a message indicating that Anna had returned back to D.C. earlier than expected.
So he's keeping his story straight with his mom.
Yeah, here's this. And I should say, Brian later tells police that his mom was recovering from some sort of like
eye surgery.
Yeah,
right?
something. And so that he needed to go out there and get her groceries and visit her. But I don't think that there's any scenario where someone would need 64 ounces of.
Oh, or 13 bottles of hydrogen peroxide. No.
Ammonia.
Or
a Tyvek
like
suit.
we're up to almost 300 different types of towels. Or I'm sorry, 300 towels. Like there was a pack of 48 and then a pack of 200.
Yeah. You know, you never can have too many. Okay, at 8:30 p.m., Brian Walsh returns home. The kids are in bed asleep, and the babysitter leaves. Now it's January 2nd.
So wait, hang on. I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
He's been gone all day.
He's been gone all day.
And he's made an appearance at like 4 stores, right?
Uh-huh.
And then at other dumpsters.
Mm-hmm.
But he's been gone all day.
Yeah. And he did tell the babysitter he was going to visit his mom. So maybe she planned on that. Okay, between 2 and 5 a.m.
Oh, here we go.
There are more searches on the oldest son's iPad. These searches include how to clean blood and DNA from objects.
With 13 kinds of hydrogen peroxide.
How to remove SIM cards from phones.
Oh, my God.
How to mix ammonia. And a search for an apartment complex in Broxton, Massachusetts. At 8 a.m., the babysitter returns and Brian heads out. And I'll just say, for those that are thinking this, because I thought the same thing, I don't know when this man sleeps. Like,
I'm sure he was in a panic.
A fight or flight.
Right?
Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Where you're just...
Because, I mean, we're, I guess, not outright saying, but it's pretty obvious that the belief here is that Brian killed Anna and is trying to get rid of her body, right? I mean, we're not outright saying it, but that's what's going on here.
That's what he's charged with.
That's what he's charged with, and that's what, the prosecutors are alleging in court, right? That's what they're reading. So we'll kind of ride that wave, right?
You guys, full disclosure, I read just like 4 Google searches and the items to my husband.
Yeah.
And he was like, stop right there. He's guilty.
He's guilty. He did it. I mean, it's, and we can talk a little bit more about, we're giving you the timeline now, but there's a lot more that confirms that this is what he was doing.
Yeah. Who knows? I mean, like we said, you're innocent until proven guilty. Maybe a jury of his peers will find him innocent.
I can't wait to do the follow-up episode.
Okay. So at 8 a.m., the babysitter returns and Brian heads out. Brian is seen on surveillance footage at Home Goods in Norwell. Again, Brian is by himself. And Norwell is 8 miles away from Cohasset.
Okay.
And in Home Goods, he purchases 3 area rugs and some scented candles. You never know. Okay. Brian returns home, and the oldest child has found Brian's cell phone in a sibling's room. Even with the return phone, the oldest child's iPad continued to make searches. How long does Lowe's maintain security videos?
No.
Yes. How apartments maintain surveillance, and numerous articles about dismembering a human body. Now, I will just say this son is 6, and if he ever, like, when you Google a lot of stuff or you're on the internet, like, other things like will pop up, like, in reference to what, when you're trying to buy a pair of shoes, like, all of a sudden there's like a ton of shoes that come up. Like, it makes me wonder what this kid's iPad is popping up for him when he's trying to watch some show, maybe on YouTube or something. Like, what kind of ads is this little 6-year-old getting?
Ads for
you know
ammonia.
what I'm saying?
Yeah, it is awful. I mean, let's assume, and in a pretend world, right? Like, that Brian is guilty of everything that we're talking about right now. How awful that he's willing to like take his son's stuff to do. Like, for one thing,
just expose his son to this kind of stuff.
It. Yeah, because we're under the assumption, I guess, that Brian used the iPad to search this stuff.
Well, either that or the
6-year-old is a brilliant mastermind.
Well, and can foresee all the places that his dad may or may not be traveling or buying.
And is just curious about Lowe's.
Yeah.
But he's using the iPad to kind of like dodge, like, it's not me. It's not my direct search from me. So he's not doing it on his phone.
He's circumventing.
Or his laptop. Yeah, circumventing is the perfect word.
Yeah.
But how disgusting.
Yeah. No, for sure. For sure. Disgusting is a great word. Okay. There is more iPad searches.
Of course there is. They don't stop.
No. At 12:45 p.m., is a hacksaw a best way to dismember? At 1:10 p.m., can you be charged with murder without a body?
I don't know, Brian, tell us.
At 1:14 p.m., can you identify a body with broken teeth?
Oh my goodness. Why?
Yeah. These are very specific. At 4 p.m., Brian travels alone to Home Depot in Rockland, and Rockland is 13 miles away from Cohasset, and he spends about $450 in cleaning supplies. Again,
more after all that stuff
he bought at Lowe's. Okay, so this is the stuff that he bought at Home Depot.
Oh my goodness.
He buys 3 5-gallon buckets with leak-proof lids.
So more buckets.
Yeah, so now we're up to 8 total buckets. A Tyvek suit. So this is the second Tyvek suit. A hatchet, plastic sheeting, and 24 pounds of baking soda.
What?
He's going to make a lot of cookies.
What do you do with baking soda?
I think they soak up blood. I mean,
I'm not going to search
odor,
it. Here's the thing.
Yeah.
I'm not dumb enough to go search it now. But these are huge quantities of these supplies.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Which, again, like, we're saying alleged, right?
Yeah. Well, no, this is what's been laid out by the prosecutor.
Well, yes.
So this isn't like, we're not making up like what he purchased. Like, this is all, you go into these stores, they have receipts. If the police can request these receipts, you can see the surveillance video.
Well, he is on surveillance, but he does, again, this is one of the things I don't understand about him. He thinks he's smartening up. Into Home Depot, he wears a mask, like a, like a COVID mask.
Yeah.
And he paid in cash. Now, because of the timestamps on the cameras and stuff, big companies like these, they can still pull transaction history.
Well, and everybody uses AI to kind of view. I mean, if you go missing in like a Target parking lot or something, like Target has like amazing surveillance footage, and they use AI to kind of find your face and do all this stuff. So I'm sure other companies do too.
So it's like this man who is seemingly smart, though. I mean, he's in his 40s. Like, he's a father. He's had a long life with a rich history of defrauding people. Yeah. And he's really this dumb. I don't know what other word for it.
Yeah. I mean, the commentary out there for him is
not, he's an idiot.
Yeah. It's not favorable.
Truly.
Okay. At
We were at Home Depot. And
yeah,
then I
we are.
derailed you. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
no, you're good. Brian drives to the Derby Street shops, and his car is seen traveling behind the shops in the area of the dumpsters.
Oh, he's back to the dumpster
Yeah.
thing.
Brian drives back around to the shop's storefronts. He picks up takeout. He goes home, and the
Ew.
babysitter leaves.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so if we are looking at the times that he's doing these things,
Yeah.
he basically is visiting dumpsters
He's going to stores in
in between stores, right?
Yeah.
So is it that he's like getting rid of body parts, we say with respect, in different stages?
I mean,
You know, he's dumping something and then going back with more cleaning supplies.
So we'll go through what the police
Okay.
think later in the timeline, and we can, I don't know, our audience can draw their own conclusion.
That's
because
true.
we don't know.
Well,
So,
we almost know.
hey,
It's alleged.
I
I know.
on January 3rd at 1:18 to 7 a.m., the oldest child's iPad searches.
No, there's not more.
Okay, they visit websites to remove the odor of decomposing bodies, and it visits a website called aftermath.com.
What?
And this company specializes in crime scene cleanup.
Oh, okay.
And then there's other website visits for how blood can be taken using fluorescein, which is that spray that you see on like CSI and stuff like that kind of turns the blood blue or whatever.
Its sole purpose is to identify blood.
Yeah. And how to remove blood stains from concrete are the searches. Okay.
With baking soda, maybe?
Yeah. And ammonia.
And ammonia.
Brian Walshe drove his children to daycare and to school and returns home. At 8:30 a.m., Brian attempts to call Anna's cell phone. The call goes unanswered, and he does this 3 more times, ending around 2:30 p.m. At 10:30 a.m., Brian texts one of Anna's friends in Washington, D.C., and asks if she's seen Anna. Brian Walshe drove to an apartment complex in Abington, Massachusetts, which is about 16 miles from his home in Cohasset. Surveillance video shows him hoisting a heavy garbage bag into a dumpster. At 4:48 p.m., prosecutors say Brian drove to a second apartment complex in Abington, where he disposed of another garbage bag full of items. At 5:10 p.m., Brian drove to Brockton, Massachusetts, 10 miles away from Abington, to another complex to throw yet more items in a trash bin.
And this guy thinks he's being smart.
And I will say it's unknown if this apartment complex that he drove to in Brockton has any correlation to the search that he searched in Broxton apartment complexes a couple days before.
Okay.
But like regardless, he is leaving a massive time-stamped
trail.
Digital
Yeah.
trail and surveillance footage of what he's doing and where he's going. And keep in mind, he's only allowed to take the kids to and from school and has to clear like his weekly visits to the grocery store, to his, probation officer or whoever.
Right, which is, to me, again, not a professional in any of these specialties that could like observe behavior like that. But to me, it looks like he's having like a psychotic break. He's been up for 3 days, 40. I mean, their friend left New Year's Eve at 1:30. So they were
in the
up
morning.
late.
And his searches, we'll
They're
just
up all night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's someone's not sleeping it. Who's ever in charge of the iPad, they're not
sleeping. There's like a little bit of time between searches, but not enough for like to show a break, really.
Yeah.
And then he's on surveillance camera all day long.
Yeah.
Like it sounds like a psychotic break because he's also making decisions that are clearly being made not in someone's right mind, right? And then trying to cover his tracks. It's just
very erratic.
It is very erratic.
And I think he probably thought it was well planned because he's visiting like a ton of different locations, but
right, that he's being smart and he's using.
But apparently in Massachusetts, like there's surveillance videos everywhere.
I mean, it's 2023 though.
Yeah.
This was only a year ago. They are everywhere.
They are everywhere.
Even Ring doorbells are everywhere, and those are
true.
surveillance.
I know. I always think of like,
CCTV.
Yeah, in London, like they always have everything
everywhere.
going. But we don't do CCTV here in the United States.
Apparently we should.
Yeah. On January 4th, 2023, at 10:03 a.m., Anna's friend who Brian had texted the day before responds and asks if he had heard from Anna. At 10:30 a.m., Brian calls Anna's work and reports her missing. At 10:18 a.m., Brian texts back to Anna's friend stating her work is looking for her. At 10:30 a.m., Anna's work calls Brian and begins the process of trying to find her. After talking to Brian, Tishman and Spire employees begin to contact their local and national employees. They send out emails, they go to Anna's home in DC, and they try to locate her. They also call local hospitals. During their calls to Brian, they encourage him to contact the Cohasset police and report her missing. Like, Tishman Spire, you can see that they have like emails and call logs, and they're doing what a regular person would do if they find out someone is missing.
Right, absolutely.
And keep in mind, this is on January 4th, so she's been gone 3 days before he calls her work. At 10:40 a.m., Tishman Spire security notifies Cohasset police. And at 12 p.m., Cohasset police arrive at Brian and Anna's home to interview Brian. Brian tells police that she left for DC around 6 a.m. on January 1st for a work emergency, wearing a black coat, blue-gray hunter boots, had a Prada purse, a Louis Vuitton overnight bag, and possibly an Hermes watch.
So that's what Brian says she was wearing?
That's what Brian says she was wearing. He told police his oldest son had seen his mom take a taxi that morning. On January 5th, 2023, Cohasset police had determined Anna Walshe had not flown to DC on JetBlue, the airline she usually flies on. She had not flown to Washington, D.C. on the 3rd either, which is when her flight was scheduled originally. Nor had she left the country through the Logan Airport in Boston. She had not used Lyft or Uber or any other local taxi company. So they're on it pretty quickly trying to figure out where she was. And the last time her cell phone pinged was between 3 and 5 a.m. on January 2nd from a tower that includes in its coverage zone the Walshe's residence in Cohasset. Cohasset police notified Massachusetts State Police and began canvassing the area. They sent detectives to Washington, D.C. to try and locate Anna. So right now there's like this full-scale search on it. Like
they're on top of it.
Yeah. At 9:30 a.m. on the 5th, Brian travels to his mom's home in Swampscott, and his cell phone shows through negative location data that he is near the dumpster of his mother's apartment complex. In the evening, he spoke to detectives again, and Brian explains Anna's leaving all over again. He explains that she told him at 1:30 after their friend left that she had this work emergency. Their son saw her at 6, everything that she was wearing. On January 6th, detectives speak to Brian again. Brian agrees to turn over the digital devices from his home. Items
explain to me. He's like, sure, no problem. You want to check out this iPad first?
Yeah, no, he's, appearing to be helpful, I guess. Items include Brian's cell phone, which he thinks is safe, the oldest child's iPad, and the oldest child's cell phone. And police download and search the devices and look at the searches and locations. Now, like we said, he hasn't been found guilty, but come on, did they think like, oh, this is a 6-year-old, we're not going to check his searches because he's only looking up, I don't know, what do 6-year-olds watch? Bluey?
Well, they definitely don't know how to spell hydrogen peroxide, I'll tell you that much.
Maybe he's really smart,
He could be very smart, but still, of course, when someone is assumed missing, right? Because at this point, no one knows anything.
No, yeah.
She literally vanished
missing
between what Brian says the 6-year-old saw and DC, so we don't know. But of course, the spouse is always going to be looked at pretty quickly, right? So I'm assuming they're asking for data right away, like they really are trying to get to the bottom of this, but it's so simple. Again, when you step back and look at it and you look at all of the things collectively that have been done and at what times, it's like, come on.
Yeah. I mean,
dude. And they
he
charge
didn't
him,
do himself any favors.
No, he didn't. And they charge him very quickly, all things considered, right?
I mean, so on January 8th, police obtain a search warrant for Brian and Anna's home and vehicle in Cohasset. They find 8 brown red stains in the basement that tested positive for blood.
Oh, I didn't even know that. They found blood.
The Volvo SUV tested positive for the presumptive presence of blood. Say that 3 times fast. In the driver's seat control areas, the passenger floor mats, and in the rear trunk area. All of the dumpsters that Brian had visited, except for one, had been emptied and taken to CMAS, a large-scale waste-to-energy recycling facility where the contents of the dumpster are shredded and incinerated. This recycling process goes on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And police found all of those contents that had been incinerated. Police found that all of those contents that had been incinerated were just ash.
Gone.
Yeah, they were just ash. So, except for the one dumpster, do you want to know what they found in the one dumpster that hadn't gone to CMAS?
Was it 12 empty bottles of hydrogen peroxide, 25 towels soaked in blood, 6 buckets?
They found Volkswagen keys, Anna's COVID vaccination card, an Hermes watch identical to the watch Anna wore, blue-gray hunter boots, a black Prada purse, a short black coat, rugs that were known to be in the Walshe's living room and kitchen with brown red stains, and a piece of a Gucci necklace that was known to have been worn by Anna wrapped in one of the rugs.
Oh my goodness. So everything she was wearing.
Everything that he told police that she was wearing, except for the Louis Vuitton overnight bag.
Well, so it does seem like if she is dressed in these things and then he's disposing of them because that's what she was wearing at the time of her murder, right? That maybe she was getting ready to leave.
I mean,
because
maybe, or he just took random stuff out of her closet to throw away.
Okay, that could be true.
I don't know.
Yeah.
There were also some items that Brian had purchased at Lowe's and Home Depot.
No.
Are you ready for this?
Oh, here we go.
One of the Tyvek's full cover suits, and it had a stains on it, and it turned out that Anna's DNA was a contributor.
Wow.
His DNA is already back on some items. The Lennox high-tension hacksaw, there was a small bone fragment recovered, and DNA is still pending. A hammer, hatchet, and snips.
So you threw away all the murder tools.
Yeah. Well, just in this bag. Like, that was what was found in just the one, because the others were, all the other times he went to the dumpsters.
Which I did look that up. You know, when I was just barely getting into this case, I was like, well, how did they not find her in a landfill? And by her, again, like, I want to speak about it respectfully, but
sure. Well, we hear about those cases all the time where someone tries to use the public garbage facility as a dumping ground.
Yeah, exactly. So my question is, and maybe we'll never know, did Brian know that the trash in this area gets incinerated?
Oh, yeah.
Or is he just
It wasn't
lucky?
one of his Google searches. So.
It wasn't. That's what I mean.
But maybe
if you've been a resident for a long time, maybe you know that. Or maybe he's just that stupid and didn't, like, he just got lucky. I don't want to say lucky, but you know what I mean? Like, we just, if it's not clear, like, no one has been able to recover Anna's body as of now.
No.
So did he get lucky? And again, I don't want to use that word like as if I'm belittling what happened. And obviously he's not that lucky because he left a ton of other evidence.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, you know, had the trash not been incinerated, there likely would be a lot more evidence, including possibly her remains.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And sad for her family that she still has not been found.
Right. It is very sad.
On January 8th, so still, Brian is arrested for misleading police in his wife's missing person investigation. And by this time, the babysitter would state to police that the downstairs area rugs had been replaced, as well as the kitchen trash can. Well, yeah, like a hindsight, like, oh my gosh, I was in this house. And,
yeah. Well, she
and I
probably
will say,
was.
the basement door, it's been described, which the prosecutors didn't say, but from everything, like all the news that we could read online and the articles that were available, because again, this is still an active case, they say that the basement door was like locked and bolted and that nobody had a key except for Brian.
Interesting.
And so it wasn't like a basement door that the kids could just like open and go in the
or like
basement.
the staircase was open.
Yeah, and then see this whatever was happening downstairs. So there was really no way for the babysitter to be like, oh, like I looked in the house, like it wouldn't have been in an area where
right, it was obvious
where she would have been babysitting the kids.
Okay.
On January 9th, Brian is arraigned and he pleads not guilty. On January 17th, prosecutors announced that Brian Walshe will be charged with Anna's murder. And his lawyer at the time fought back on this murder charge because in his defense, is what the lawyer said, there was that Massachusetts law says that a person has to be missing for 7 years before they can be declared dead.
Oh, wow.
And so they kind of pushed back when he was originally charged with that, and that may be part of their defense argument. But I mean, clearly this mom of 3 kids doesn't show up to work, doesn't, and all of these
vanishes,
suspicious searches, the searches are problematic. His lawyer even told the court that the Google searches are problematic for her client. Like those were her words.
It's a very professional term to use.
Yeah. And then on January 18th, Brian is back in court to hear the charges against him for her murder, which is where we get all of the prosecutors' kind of initial evidence that they're presenting to the court, which is why we have this record, because everything was presented at the time that this was happening. And it's just wild. Like, he just had another court hearing on March 4th, 2024. He's scheduled to go back to court on May 1st. A month or so ago, his lawyer had said that he doesn't have enough funds to pay her, and so he was given a
public defender.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
To represent him. And so the public defender was at this court hearing on March 4th, and
that's going to delay things.
Yeah,
right?
it's going to cause a delay. So that's what he just said. He's like, oh, we've gotten some DNA back, but we're still waiting for more, and I've got to get caught up with the case. And, in the United States, I'm assuming Brian has waived his right to a speedy trial, and so that's why it's dragging out, because you do have the right to a speedy trial, but
I don't even know what that means anymore,
Yeah.
Because I just want to note that, typically, or not typically, but often in the true crime realm, we hear that these cases can drag on for years and years and years. But I just wanted to note, like, give props almost, like the Cohasset Police Department moved very quickly on this.
Oh, they did. Like, they were on it. Tishman Speyer was on it. Like,
they were.
For
the prosecutor to be able to read that list of evidence.
Oh my goodness.
A week and a half passed? That's amazing.
Well, yes, that is true. It was a week.
January.
Yeah, it was a week and a half past. And honestly, I always the prosecutor has to present the case like in a way that so like the defense knows like what's going to happen. Can you imagine being the defense attorney if you hadn't already been given like, hey, P.S., here's some Google searches that are going to be problematic. Maybe I mean, the video, it doesn't show the prosecutor or the defense attorney until it's her time to speak. But like, my mouth would have been gaping. I guess that's why we're not lawyers.
Like, what do you say? Right. Like,
I'd be looking at my client like,
you're right. That's problematic.
Please tell me you did not do this.
Brian, look me in the eyes, Brian.
Yeah, where you're just looking at them like, are you dead serious right now?
Oh my gosh.
Oh, good gracious.
This case is very in depth so far for the progression that we're at, right?
Yeah.
And I'm interested to see where it goes from here, because from the outside it looks cut and dry. And again, outside meaning like we're just your average everyday.
Yeah.
We're not in any of the fields that are going to be influenced right now, like law.
And we're only able to just say what has been stated publicly. And, for those wondering motive, other than, prosecutors say Brian suspected her of having an affair.
Right.
And it was confirmed that she was having an affair. Police were able to uncover that, which his lawyer claims he found out about that after she had gone missing. But she had, in 2001, she had taken out a $2.2 million policy, and Brian was the sole beneficiary. Tishman Speyer had given her $400,000 as part of her package for them. And again, Brian was the sole beneficiary. So that totals over $2.7 million in life insurance.
No. Entitled to those life insurance payouts because she's passed.
Yeah,
she's passed.
Good question. So I can't speak directly for these companies that have insured her, but usually in the United States, a criminal cannot profit off of his victim's murder. And so I'm assuming that the insurance isn't going to be paid out to Brian until either if he's found not guilty, then I would assume that it would. But I don't know how it works for like her children. If after a certain period of time, if her children can get some of the money, or how that would kind of work.
I hope so.
I mean,
I hope so. Cause
they're really, Anna's clearly missing, presumed dead, presumed murdered. But those 3 kids lost both parents in this scenario. And from all the information that I could gather, and maybe for what you could gather too, but the 3 boys are in state custody.
Yeah.
And Massachusetts has said that they try to keep siblings together, but there's not a state law that kind of keeps that
says you have to.
Stipulates that they need to stay together. So they're really young for a 2-year-old. I mean, he's not going to remember his mom, or just stories that maybe someone will tell. But, there's even the 4-year-old, even 6.
Yeah, you're young enough that you're going to forget a lot. Probably.
Yeah, which is so sad. It's so sad.
It is very heartbreaking to think about those boys.
Yeah, and her apartment in Washington, D.C., when police went over and looked at her apartment, it looked like it was being set up to accommodate her boys.
Right. So all signs point to Anna was...
Yeah, it's okay.
Again, potentially making moves to move on.
To move her boys there because,
But to move on from her marriage as well. I mean, she was having an affair, which, I can't say that I blame her, so I'm not, coming for her. I'm just saying.
I will say on February 20th of 2024, Brian, who is now 49, was sentenced in U.S. Senior District Court by Judge William G. Young to 37 months in prison and 3 years of supervised release for his counterfeit Warhol painting.
So it's fraud charges.
He is also ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $475,000. And he had pled guilty to 1 count each of wire fraud, interstate transportation for a scheme to defraud an unlawful monetary transaction. And he did appeal the sentence on March 4th. His lawyer did. A different lawyer.
Why bother?
So, yeah, he's in the middle of this criminal. He's appealing this. But he was found guilty
of the fraud.
Charges, yeah, and those were his. Those were his.
I mean, kind of, it seems like his entire, at least adulthood, he's trying super hard to be a criminal mastermind here.
Well, I don't know if you could use the word mastermind because
he's trying.
Yeah.
Right? Trying, and then kind of finally gets to the crescendo and is just an absolute mess, if you will. He's, like you said, leaving a trail everywhere he goes, which thank God he did, right? Let's just say.
Yeah. Otherwise,
we're not mad at him.
No, otherwise people wouldn't. No, but the police wouldn't know. She would still be an active missing.
She could have gone missing anywhere between DC and home. Yeah, this could have gone on forever. So like we're grateful that he's either suffering a psychotic break or that he's just an idiot. We're not sure which ones. And again,
it'll be up to a jury to decide, which
it will.
Sarah, unfortunately, you won't be on that
wrong
jury.
State. I'll be in the wrong state.
She'll hurry up and move to Massachusetts.
It'll be interesting to see how this winds down, although it seems that we probably have a good idea. And it's a very sad case. That one's tough. It was tough to think about the disposal of, at least all of his
or
cleaning
what
stuff.
was happening. Especially his searches were kind of very graphic.
So
Not kind
graphic.
of, but were graphic.
This was someone you married and was the mother of your children. They're sleeping in the next room. They're in the home with her. And you're searching just very, again, like we know, and I'm not saying all sociopaths, okay? But remember, back to his diagnosis, one of the common behaviors is a complete disregard for other human beings.
Yeah.
And here's proof of that.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
All right. Well, we're going to follow this. We're going to, keep up with it and see what happens. We'll do a follow-up episode when we get more information. And as we're going to do at the end of all of our cases, we're just going to give a little bit of our takeaways, right? Like what we learned either from real estate or crime or both at the end of these cases that we're looking at as we go, like as this one is continuing to move forward, right? We still don't know everything, but what is your takeaway, Amy, from what we do know?
I think my biggest takeaway is probably something that we actually failed to mention to our audience, which was about Anna filing a charge where Brian had attempted to or threatened to kill her, I guess, years before. Do you remember the date on that?
Yeah, so it was in 2014, and we had kind of gone back and forth about bringing this up or not, because this charge that we have, and we actually have the police report, okay? But this charge, it
was later dropped.
It was dropped, right? And so we just were unsure about bringing it into the timeline, because if there is more evidence that Brian was abusive in any way, we would want to know what that evidence is. But this police report does state on August 2nd of 2014, now some of it's redacted, so we can only assume, right? But that there was a threat of life made from the redacted name to Anna, and it had her unmarried name at that time, so Nip, K-N-I-P-P. It was felony threats, and in the comments, it states that, again, redacted, made a statement over the telephone that he was going to kill the victim, Anna, and he made this statement to a friend. And so it does state later that the victim refused to cooperate with the prosecution. That was noted on January 11th, 2023, sorry. And so this is an indicator, and there were a couple other of signs that kind of get dropped throughout the case if you look at it, where maybe there were some Instagram posts that were kind of a little bit gray.
She had a black eye in one.
And that she had told a couple friends here and there that Brian had a tendency to be abusive, but there's nothing that we have besides this. But this was a part of your takeaway. So
yeah,
go ahead.
I just meant like we always hear of these, or we hear after the fact of a friend saying something, seeing something and some red flags, and us ignoring that. And I think the takeaway from this is don't ignore the red flags. Don't ignore, whether you're involved in that relationship or you're seeing it from the outside point of view. I think for me, that is my biggest takeaway from this tragedy. That, Brian was on house arrest, and I realized that he traveled to a lot of different places, but she had a separate life in Washington, D.C., and I think it may have been very easy for her to, take the boys. And maybe she stayed for the boys. And I'm not victim shaming at all, but
of course not.
I just think it's so sad. We often hear so many times of cases.
She stayed for the boys.
Yeah,
she stayed for the kids.
Yeah,
right.
and it ends up she made the ultimate sacrifice for staying.
Very true. That's kind of similar to my takeaway as well. I had someone in my life say to me a long time ago, and it just really stuck with me, right? They said, when someone tells you who they are, believe them. Right? And so in this case, it ties in for me, because kind of like what you just said, though, there's a history of Brian defrauding, being fraudulent, hurting people, right? Like hurting his father. And you would assume by such also his mother was hurt as well. Hurting his friends back in South Korea that he stole the paintings from. And then people that were victimized by him selling them fraudulent art pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Like there were victims literally all over the place. Like they were everywhere in his life. And we don't know what Anna did or didn't know necessarily. I mean, it would make sense that someone who is committing these types of crimes would also be doing their best to conceal that from their partner.
Yeah.
But we don't know. But when someone tells you who they are, believe them. Like this man was willing to hurt family, friends, anyone around him.
Yeah.
And again, not victim blaming or shaming, of course, because there's no way she could have seen.
No, and had she
coming.
seen, like, everybody who can see it coming would probably,
Right, would have taken measures to leave. Sure. But when someone exemplifies this type of behavior where you could easily be the next one in their path, just like you said, don't hang on hoping it might get better or thinking it will change, because this is proof, evidence in his life that he was never going to change. He's almost 50.
Yeah.
And these crimes went on for a very long time. I do also just want to kind of tie in as a takeaway real quick. When you are in a partnership, whatever that looks like, and you're purchasing investments together,
Yeah.
be smart about it. I would love to know that everyone who's making investments mutually or with, another, again, either business partner or life partner, whatever, is taking the right steps to like legally protect themselves in those investments, which Anna did.
Yeah.
And, we assume from some of the searches and stuff that Brian had made that he was hoping to inherit that money or to get all that money.
Yeah.
And that he won't, at least as it stands right now, because he's even just a suspect. I know if you're even just a suspect in the death of someone that you are not issued these payments.
Yeah.
But take the right legal recourse to set yourself up for protection. Now, I'm not saying everyone who goes and buys an investment property is going to end up missing or murdered because of their spouse. I'm just saying, plan your investments wisely. She was doing that. It's obvious in all of her work and in the things that she was doing professionally that she was planning this stuff out for the betterment of her life and her children.
Yeah, I think she was creating that financial nest egg for her to be able to still work as a single mom needing to have some kind of caregiver come in to take care of her 3 boys.
Right.
But also have that residual income to help kind of pay for those extra expenses, because that sounds like a big salary, but in Washington, D.C., in an area where it's really expensive to live.
In 2023.
Yeah, or Boston, Massachusetts. Like,
sure. There's
a lot of like high-end expensive things. And it seemed like they both really liked nice, expensive, like, accessories too.
Yeah, rightfully so.
Yeah.
So plan your investments smartly and pay attention to who you are working with, and just know behaviors typically like this don't change.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm glad you brought up the investments again, because I think if for our listeners that are interested in getting into investing, that just, ask the right questions, make sure you hire the right professional. They'll be able to tell you what your short-term ROI, which is return on investment, long-term ROI. They can help you strategize and figure out if, what kind of investment property is good for you, whether that's, something that you're living in and renting out part of your home, or you're buying completely separate units that can be rented out and legally and whatever. But like, I'm glad you brought that back up again.
That's kind of what Anna did at Tishman Speyer, right?
Yeah.
She did, a part of her job description was risk management and asset management. So the right professional, a real estate agent, and I would even advise, not advise like legally, but I was just going to say, I would say get a lawyer also to review documents and paperwork
and your accountant.
for investments.
I
I
always tell my investors, like, let's go talk to your CPA. Let's have a conversation. Like, what does your tax look like? Like, what, does this help? Does this hurt? Like, let's have a conversation. And so, pay the professionals that know what they're doing.
Yeah, to strategize for you as you build your portfolio. So that was a great tie-in. Well, we're going to wrap up case number 3.
Yeah.
The disappearance of Anna Walshe. Really looking forward to a resolution, whatever that looks like. and excited to continue telling our stories about real estate and murder.
Yeah.
I do just want to say these stories can be really dark, especially when we're trying to give the information and tell the story in a way that makes sense, but they can be really dark. So, Amy, I'm going to leave this episode today, if it's okay, with a joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to lighten it up a little bit
Okay.
for our listeners, for me and you, because we've been researching some dark things for a couple of weeks. So I'm going to tell you a little joke. You ready?
Yeah.
Amy, a serial killer chased me through the woods last night. We ran for my life.
I'm glad you ran. I'm glad you ran.
Everyone laugh a little in between all the dark stuff. And we'll see you next time for case number 4.
All right.
Have a good one.
Enjoy.